Hello, my name is Jorb. I love gear, and this is the Strymon Volante. It came out in 2019, I think, so a few years ago now. They describe it as a magnetic echo machine. Knowing that it has 4 heads and looking at it visually, if you're familiar with the Vincent Echo Rec, you'll definitely see a clear inspiration, and it does that. One of the types is drum, but it also does tape delays. Really, it's Strymon's follow-up to the El Capistan. This is a pedal I've had for 4 or 5 years. I bought it on Rich Robinson's reverb sale. It was broken, and I fixed it.
Hey everyone, Jason Shadrick here with PremierGuitar.com, and we're with Doug Red Redler, guitar tech for Rich Robinson and the Black Crows.
We like the Super Pussy. El Capistan is a great backup for one of the tube tape echoes. It really sounds great.
And I've used it for everything. You've probably seen it in some of my videos. I used it to add general ambiance to a lot of synthesizers, and it was on my pedal board when I was a guitarist forever. So this is a follow-up I was really, really excited about. It seems not like a sequel, but a growth of those ideas or a redevelopment of those ideas with the 5 or 6 years of experience they had after putting out the El Capistan. I have immediately fallen in love with it, and this will be a relatively complete walkthrough of a lot of the things it can do. I'll go all the way from basic delay controls, multi-head patterns and how to manipulate them, and eventually I'll plug this into some MIDI devices and route some CC and things to it. So if that sounds like it's of interest to you, stick around. This particular pedal was sent to me by the fine folks at Perfect Circuit, and if you want to buy one, I'll have an affiliate link in the description that leads you to Perfect Circuit. I can get a kickback if you buy anything from there, not just this. But if you aren't familiar with Perfect Circuit, they sell synths and effects, clearly. And they actually have a really, really great selection of EuroRack stuff, which is not true for every online instrument. And certainly isn't true for ones that ship worldwide, and Perfect Circuit does. So thanks again, Perfect Circuit, for sending this over. Alrighty, let's get to some noises. Right now, got a pretty normal sound and a fair number of repeats. So the basic delay controls, you can think of them as these 3 here. Time, repeats, and echo level. More repeats you have, the longer your signal will ring out. Time. Time, of course, changes how long before the next repeat. Up to really, really quick. More repeats even. I really could play with that forever. Echo level is just the volume of those repeats. And it can get louder than your dry signal, which we like. Cool. On the back, there's a switch to go between instrument and line level. I'm on line because I'm using a line level sound source. If I was using a guitar or something else with passive pickups like my electric pianos, I might leave it on instrument. But that brings us over to this record level option. So if I bring that all the way down, we still hear a delay. It's a little quieter than it was. This record level is not just cutting the volume of what we put in. As you increase it, it's gain on an analog preamp. And I find that it's a little hard to get it cranking, at least with the settings I have on the Juno right now, especially lower. But if I switch it down to instrument mode, that'll lower our headroom. And you can hear that distortion on the repeats. Let's do something with even more low end to really crank it. A little less aggressive. A little less aggressive still. More echo level so we can hear it. Less repeats so it doesn't hang on for so long. There, it's just barely crunchy. Very cool. But I'm going to slip back into line mode so everything stays nice and clean. That's more helpful for my demonstrations, even if I would love to use that preamp distortion on some other things. Finally, there's not just a delay, there's also spring reverb. So I'm going to turn off the echo level. We're just going to listen to the reverb. I think it sounds quite nice. Let's get a little more brightness in there. I really like that. And let's bring back in the echoes. If we mix those together, and maybe if I do a slower sound. Already, this is... That already, to me, sounds quite interesting. Very, very straightforward. Let me get back to a percussive sound again. Okay, back to a more percussive sound. There's a few other things we can do, even if we're just talking about the basic delay controls. So we have this switch here that changes the speed of the entire, they call it a D-tape, a digital tape emulation. So if I cut down to half speed, everything is half as slow as it once was. If you switch it in the middle, everything will change its pitch to follow along with you. So let me seed it with something really long. Very cool. We can also go to double speed. It just barely ramps up. Do you guys hear that? It ramps up to the next speed. It doesn't like instantly jump to it, and that makes it sound really, really pleasing. It probably eliminates artifacting as well. So not only, I mean, so I'm doing a lot of playing with it, so you can hear the effect when you change the time of the buffer. Which you can, of course, do just on the time knob as well. But just as a quick in-between songs, or while you're working on something, say, hey, you know what? What if that was way slower? I like having that just on a switch. To great effect. Okay, that's a lot of the basic delay controls. So I mentioned the Echo Rec earlier. So there are 3 types of machine emulation or model emulation. Let's first listen to drum, which would be like the Benson Echo Rec. It's called the drum echo because it's one spinning. I think it's like a... I think the recording medium is this like rotating drum, and it has 4 playback heads. Anyway, what it sounds like here without changing anything else. Not that different. Let's just to demonstrate here, I'll go to tape. Then this would be like the Space Echo, the RE201, or the Echoplex. And then the last mode is like a studio tape, a really, really clean, reel-to-reel studio tape. The EQ response of that, but all the controls of a delay. So right now, they're not all that different, right? But we also have mechanics and wear. And so mechanics is sort of issues with the tape or issues with the replication of the machine. And so I'm going to turn that all the way up, and we're back on drum. Let's just listen to how that sounds now. Here's some pitch movement right away. And wear is sort of simulating old tape, so you lose high end. Darker repeats every time. One more increase of wear. Low cut. Cuts out low end. We'll bring that up as well. That's sounding more lo-fi. Let's put both the EQs way up. That was drum again, so now we should hear more of a difference when we move on to tape. You notice there's different types of mechanical failures. There's different types of mechanical anomaly. You get tape crinkle, and you get that sort of flutter that sounds like tape. As opposed to whatever mechanical failures happen on a drum echo. To be honest, I don't know what exactly they would be. Speed fluctuations, certainly. But other than that, I'm not sure. find myself staying on the tape more often than any of the others, even though I've only had a short time with this. Because those are the artifacts I'm the most familiar with. And if I move on to the studio grade tape, not much artifacting. Or maybe I probably shouldn't use that word because that has implications for digital simulation, but not as many mechanical anomalies. How about that? But still responds to the EQ really, really well. So I'm going to stay on tape. I like having low cut about the middle. I like having wear in the top half. I like having mechanics in the top half. That seems to add the sort of sparkle I like. And you'll rarely find me using this without the spring reverb on. How's my mirror doing? Not bad. We can, of course, tap that tempo in. And if you change the tap tempo really quick, it does not artifact in pitch. Which is nice if you're trying to make slight adjustments. Which is most of how I experience tap tempo. I'm live and I want to catch back up to the rest of the band. So I'll tap it in a new tempo. And this will stop it from artifacting in pitch, and this will stop it from jumping in pitch if I get it wrong or I hit it twice. I just have to deal with my own inaccurate tapping. So you're probably wondering, what's going on with all these LEDs in the middle, Jorb? You haven't shown us anything about those. Well, that is the interface for selecting which heads are playing and which heads are feeding back. So I'm going to pull up a diagram that's in the manual of the Volante. And first of all, I love that this is in here. This is the sort of thing that if I didn't have hard information on, I would be guessing. And it's really easy to be wrong when I guess. So Strymon, thank you for including this. But if we look at this diagram for the digital tape or the digital recording medium, if you look at this circle, you can think of that as the tape, or in the case of the Echo Rec, you can think of it as the steel drum. And as it moves counterclockwise, the record head puts a piece of audio, puts a piece of data on that tape or on that record head, and then it moves from left to right. And so it'll get picked up by these heads as it passes by them if they're activated. So if I turn off all the playback heads, while I don't have any playback heads selected, if I play a noise, you just hear the input getting past the output. But if I turn on any of the playback heads, even if the feedback heads are off, and you can hear that's affected by the wear and the mechanics. So let me turn on all 4 of these heads, and let's listen. Let me turn the time down. We hear 5 sounds because we're hearing the original input and then the 4 repeated heads. For everything until now, I was on just head 4, playing back and feeding back, because that'll give you your longest repeats. And they're even. They're the same space of time every time, because when you have a feedback head, whatever gets played back on that head, in this case just number 4, shows back up at the record head. So at the same place where I would play it in, that's coming all the way back from the same place it's getting played back. Right? Now, what if we mess with that? What if we're feeding back from the signal on head 3 and then playing it back only when we get to head 4? See, that first delay is longer than any of the subsequent ones. Okay, if we put on multiple playback heads, we start to get multi-tap delay sounds. It's rhythmic. And if I hold on these playback heads, I can play them back at half volume. So then we have another element to the sort of rhythmic patterns we're hearing. So cool. the space echo is what I think of most of the time with tape echoes, because I have one, and you saw me show off the RE202, which I might compare these specifically later if you're interested in that. But there are only 3 heads to combine. On the RE201, the RE202 adds a 4th for some settings, I believe, in response to this. And the Echo Rec had 4 heads. But you can get some kind of very busy, very complicated rhythms by sort of turning on a lot of these, sort of randomly turning these on. Really dense patterns. Or we turn on everything for the feedback heads, or I like to have a single feedback head. And then you have some very understandable, it's not hard to abstract, the rhythm of quiet, loud, especially when it's repeating all at the same rate. That's normally what I find myself doing. Not to say I don't like the exploration of doing something slightly different now and again. And speaking of doing something different now and again, and if you look back at our diagram here, there's stereo processing as part of our signal flow. Well, one of the things we can do, if I hold on the feedback buttons and then I turn the time knob, I can pan the output of individual heads. So I'm going to turn them to be alternating left and right. And let's listen. I hope you're listening in stereo. I'll turn this way down. Oops, I want to turn it way down. Hear that coming through both ears? I think that's great. We've created a ping pong delay. Double speed. Great. And what if I add another feedback head? If you'll notice again at our diagram, all the feedback gets added together, and that goes to the record head together in mono. So any of the signals that get added up and recorded, so any of the signals that get fed back don't persist in stereo as they go through the feedback loop. So even if something gets played back on the left, it'll get put to the... Even if something gets played back on the left originally, it'll get played back with regards to the playback head that it hits the second time around, not where it was the first. And this, if I put our EQ down, bring our level up, introduce more of our ambiance, we can get a really big stereo image from stuff like this. Let alone if I make it rhythmic. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So cool. Okay. All of the sounds you've heard so far are with the heads on even spacing. And even spacing means the space between the record head to the first playback head is the same as that playback head to each one. So there's the same amount of space between. So you have the same amount of time delay between each of these. This is even spacing, and I'm going to show you the waveforms as I do this. So no feedback heads on. This is the spacing at even. Even. Who could have guessed? This is what this is what triplet looks like. This is the golden ratio. And this is the silver ratio, which I don't really know what that is. And if we combine that with, I'll go back to some of our panning here, and combine a few different heads, and a bunch of mechanical wear, and a faster time, and a bunch of repeats. Even if I move these while it's going. The possibilities for interesting rhythmic sounds is really, really huge. I don't want to say endless, but it's pretty fucking close. Really, really love that. Okay, that is pretty much every control on the panel. Shall we go a little bit deeper? There is a sound on sound mode. If you aren't familiar, sound on sound, instead of erasing what has been recorded, what has been played back, it comes all the way back through and you hear it again at one of these playback heads. This behaves closer to just a looper than it does a sound on sound mode on something like an Echoplex, but I'm still going to show it to you. So to get there, from default, especially if you don't have any of the extra switches or you aren't using MIDI control, you just need to hold this tap tempo button, and then your on light will turn orange. So I'm going to start a loop or start a splice by pressing that tap tempo button again. Let that hang for a little while, and then hit it again to start the loop over. Turn down the level of that loop. And right now, every time it passes through, it's getting affected by the mechanics, the wear, and the low cut every time. I can, of course, change the speed of the whole machine. Right now, since these are pretty aggressive, and I'll make them even more aggressive, the EQ, you can hear this getting affected by it over and over and over and over. It's getting thinner as we go. And let's look again at our diagram. Sound on sound is happening after all the reverb stuff. After all the delay stuff, but before the spring reverb. Okay, I'm going to kill that. That became very, very thin over time. If I push these back near the middle or in the lower end, if I push these back near the middle, it would persist a little bit longer, but I'm just going to show you. Turning it down so I can talk over it. If I hold the on button and this begins to flash, now every time this loops through, it does not go through the mechanics and the wear again. If I play, that won't get applied over the top of what's already there. If I bring it out, that is now part of that loop. Let's knock it back down to normal speed. And if I So I recorded that while we're at the normal and everything else while we're at the double, and you can still jump between them. Or pull it all the way down to half. I think this right now is almost totally worth the price of admission. I think this is so cool to be able to quickly whip up a degraded, vibey tape loop. Totally hands-on like this. Okay, a few other tricks involving the sort of thing you'd expect to do with a physical delay, or physical tape machine, excuse me. If I hold this pause button, we can slow to stop and slow to start. And you can control the speed of that, and you'll see me, if you hold these two buttons, it's sort of like a shift. And I can speed that way up. I like it just below the middle for the most part. And you'll see me, I was holding this and moving echo level. That's your loop level. But I could just listen to this for a really long time. And I think this could be a bass for the start of a track, no problem. I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to take it off of infinite. I'm going to increase our EQ and our mechanical wear and let this sort of fade away. And I'm going to enjoy it. I don't know if I'll include it in the video or not, but however long this takes to decay, I'm going to let it decay. Alrighty, the Volante has full-size DIN MIDI jacks on the back, which I really am a huge fan of. I believe you can also do TRS MIDI through the expression jack if you are using this on a guitar pedal board and you don't have DIN moving around and you want to use a TRS patch cable, you can totally do that. And there's USB. You can do USB MIDI over this as well. But I just have a bunch of CCs set up, and I'm going to manually change them to show you that almost all, actually really, I believe all of these parameters you can change remotely with MIDI. So I'm going to turn up the repeats and change the time right here. And I know showing you while I manually change the controls when I could just reach here isn't that impressive. This is to demonstrate all the things you could automate. So you could, at a specific point in a track or a jam, have your repeats kick way up, or have your time get a lot faster, or we have infinite hold with and without oscillation. So as long as I hold this Q link, we can have a sound persist. And this is without oscillation, and this is with. Can also manually pan all four of the heads. So let me turn them all the way right. Alternate left and right. And that's something that we can change over the course of a track. So we can have these things panning back and forth while they're repeating. I think it's really cool. Great. I can enter the sound on sound mode from a CC. So you see the light's green. As I move the Q link up, it becomes orange. And of course, once we're in sound on sound mode, I can run that pause from CC. And that ramp back up. So all of that can be automated as part of your track. I think that's really, really powerful. And I believe the ramp speed of that pause is a CC as well. So if you want it to be really, really slow at one point in your track, really, really fast at some point in another, you can do that. And I think that gives you an opportunity for really, really complete, almost... I think that's an opportunity to, in hardware and through MIDI during a live set or during a live jam, use tricks that sound like they should only be possible on a finished track, and with an interface that in a lot of ways just gives you the options you would have if you were messing with a tape reel in a really, really intuitive way. I think that is very, very impressive. Very, very well done, Strymon. I could just keep showing you little examples of what you can control over Midi CC, but I think if you're really excited about it and you think it's something you might try and do, you can see the power just from that. There are presets. There are a few ways to get to presets. You can hold and then pick one of a certain one. You can tap. It will just go to the one you have selected. Of course, Strymon has extra foot pedals to enable more. And the connection back to MIDI, you can use program changes to select from presets as well. Again, making this really, really strong for a live set. My outline's pretty thin, and the last thing I wrote was MIDI control, so I think I'm going to wrap out there. To briefly compare it to El Capistan, I think it's the second iteration of the version 1. So this has the soft touch switches, and the input can be stereo. The Volante and the El Capistan both sum their stereo signals to mono before processing it, but when it's processed, it has stereo imaging applied. In this case, we can manually pan it, along with, I'm pretty sure that the spring reverb is stereo. As far as other similarities, you can do multi-head things on this. I believe there's only 3 heads. The controls are a little bit different, but in theory, I think a lot of it is the same. It's the same, if not similar, execution of that digital tape echo. So I think for most people, El Capistan is more than enough, and especially if you really, really care about the MIDI control, I'm pretty sure you can do Midi CC on the V2 or the updated version of the El Capistan. So check that out as well if you think this is a better format for you, or there's an intimidation to the extra controls here, or you don't care to have something this big. There's a lot of reasons to choose El Cap over this. I think they're both great. I don't want to compare and contrast in a negative way, and while I do love El Capistan, it's something I feel on the Volante that I don't necessarily feel on the El Capistan. It feels like it was designed from the inside out. It feels like Strymon had a good idea of what their technology of this digital tape, yes, with an analog preamp, but they had an idea of what they could do technologically, and then they thought, okay, what is the right way to give people control of all those things? And I think, I'm saying it now after I bring up the head selection control, because that is a really, really clever, intuitive way to get so much more out of that functionality. And really, when you think about how much extra control that could be, this is a really, really elegant solution. So I think very, very well done. Mechanics and wear being separate is great. We can consider these to be our EQ, even though this has implications for the tape modeling. And mechanics is artifacts that I might want without any loss of the EQ. I am probably going to not use my El Cap very much anymore at all because there's some things that this does that I like a little bit better. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. My name is Jorb. I love gear. That certainly includes the Volante. Thanks again to Perfect Circuit. Thanks again to Strymon for designing it. Hope to see you in the next one. Cheers and so long.